The radio goes quiet at exactly the wrong moment. Not static, not interference, quiet. The kind of quiet that means everyone on the frequency is holding their breath at the same time. You've been flying long enough to know the difference between a dead radio and a silent one. This one is silent. Everyone is listening, no one is talking. 4 hours over hostile airspace. No lights, no communications. A flight plan that doesn't exist, filed with an authority that doesn't exist for an aircraft that, as far as any official record is concerned, isn't here. The compound appears in your goggles exactly where it was supposed to be. Walls, courtyard. 2 vehicles that weren't in the satellite photos taken 3 days ago. You notice the vehicles. You don't say anything. There's no one to say it to. 30 seconds out, you feel it before you understand it. The aircraft isn't responding the way it should. Not wrong enough to abort. Just wrong enough to matter. The air at this altitude, this temperature, with this load, the math you ran on the ground isn't matching the math the helicopter is running right now. You have half a second to make a decision that will outlive you either way. The original plan puts you outside the walls. The team ropes down, moves on foot, controls the approach. Clean, rehearsed. 4 months of preparation distilled into a sequence everyone has memorized. You're not going to make that landing zone. You know it the way you know things after enough years in a cockpit. Not thought, not calculated, just known. Your hands are already moving before your brain finishes the sentence. You put the helicopter down inside the compound. The tail catches the wall on the way in. You feel the impact travel up through the airframe like a shock wave through bone. The bird spins, settles hard, and for 1 second the whole world is metal and noise and the smell of hot hydraulic fluid. Then silence again. But this silence is different. This one means you made it. You don't know yet what you just helped start. You won't find out for days. Right now, you have one job. Hold the aircraft, hold your crew, and wait. 38 minutes. That's how long history's going to take. You weren't the best candidate in Green Platoon. Marcus was. Everyone knew it within the first 48 hours. Not because he announced it, not because he tried to be, he just was. 6'2", instrument ratings that read like a highlight reel. 10 years of flight hours, packed into a career that should have taken 15. The instructors watched him the way you watch something rare, not with warmth exactly, with attention. Week 1, Marcus led every ruck march, not by a little. By enough that the gap between him and second place was starting to feel like a statement. Week 2, same thing. Physical destruction phase, they called it. 12 miles, then 15, then 20. 50 pounds on your back. The kind of runs that leave you vomiting on the shoulder of a road you'll never see again in daylight. Marcus didn't vomit. He just kept moving, steady as a metronome, like his body had read the syllabus and decided to be professionally inconvenienced. You watched him and felt something complicated, not jealousy, something closer to relief. If someone like that could make it through, maybe the rest of you had a chance. Week 3, a sleep deprivation, night 3. You're somewhere on a ruck course at 2 a.m., running on 40 minutes of sleep and something that stopped being pride 2 hours ago. You hear boots stop behind you. You turn around because something in the sound is wrong. Marcus has taken off his pack. He sets it down on the ground with the kind of deliberate care that tells you this isn't a breakdown, this is a decision. He finds the nearest instructor, extends his hand, and shakes it once. Clean. Final. Then he walks away. No explanation, no scene, no last look back at the rest of you still standing there in the dark. Packs still on, watching the best candidate in the class choose a different life. The instructor writes something on his clipboard. Keeps walking. Nobody says anything for a long time. You never ask why. Not that night, not for years. Part of you is afraid the answer will make too much sense. Here's what nobody tells you about selection. You think it's a test of how much you can take. You think the ruck marches and the sleep deprivation and the pool sessions with weights strapped to your ankles are designed to find your breaking point. Push until something snaps. See what's left. That's not what's happening. The instructors aren't looking for your ceiling. They're looking for your floor. There's a difference. Your ceiling is your best day. Peak performance, rested, prepared, every variable in your favor. Every pilot who makes it to Green Platoon has a ceiling worth looking at. That's why you're here. The ceiling isn't the question. The floor is the question. What do you look like on day 4 of no sleep with a stress fracture developing in your left foot? When the mission brief makes no sense and your co-pilot is asking you something you don't have the answer to. What decisions do you make then? What kind of person shows up when the person you've practiced being goes offline? That's what the clipboards are for. Week 1, they're watching your body. Week 2, they're watching your choices. Who you help, who you stop helping, what you protect when there isn't enough energy to protect everything. Week 3, when the sleep deprivation starts bending reality at the edges, they're watching your judgment. Not whether you make the right call. Whether you make a call. The wrong answer at 3 a.m. is no answer. Hesitation is the only failure mode that matters. There's a moment in week 3 that nobody warns you about. An instructor approaches you during a planning session. Not during an exercise, just walking up, casual, like he has a question. He asks what you want to eat when this is over. Normal question. Bizarre timing. You've been awake for 31 hours. You answer, something simple, doesn't matter what. He nods, writes something down. You find out later that every candidate gets that question at a different hour, in a different state of exhaustion. They're not interested in your food preference. They're reading how you process an unexpected social interaction when your prefrontal cortex is running on fumes. Do you get suspicious, grateful? Do you try to perform? Do you just answer honestly because you're too tired to be anything other than yourself? They want the version of you that's too tired to lie, because that's the version that's going to be flying a blacked-out helicopter through a mountain pass at 3 a.m. with 8 operators in the back and a target that knows you're coming. 30% make it through. But the number that matters isn't 30. It's the moment you realize you stopped trying to impress anyone and just started trying to survive. That's when they know you might be ready. You pass Green Platoon on a Tuesday. No ceremony, no applause. An instructor finds you after the final evaluation, shakes your hand once, says 4 words, "Welcome to the 160th." Then he walks away. You stand there for a moment expecting something else. There is nothing else. That's the point. Basic Mission Qualification starts the following Monday. 6 months that make Green Platoon feel like a warm-up act for the actual show. Selection was the audition. This is the rehearsal. And the rehearsal is harder than anything you've done. The aircraft will do that to you. MH-60 Black Hawk first. You think you know this helicopter. You've logged hundreds of hours in variants of this airframe. You know the feel of it, the weight of it, the way it talks back to you through the cyclic when something's off. You know this machine. You don't know this machine. The Night Stalker version is something different. Sensors that don't appear in any manual you've ever been handed. Systems with no labels. Modifications that don't officially exist because the program that built them doesn't officially exist. You learn to fly it the way you learn a new language. not by translating, but by thinking in it. Then they put you in the MH-6 Little Bird. Everything changes. The Little Bird is the smallest helicopter in the fleet and the most honest. There's nowhere to hide in a Little Bird. Every gust of wind, every degree of temperature change, every pound of imbalance in the load, you feel all of it, directly, immediately, personally. Larger aircraft have enough mass to absorb the atmosphere's bad moods. The Little Bird argues back with everything it has. Operators ride on external benches bolted to the fuselage. No doors, no protection. Knees in the wind at 140 knots, 200 feet off the ground in total darkness. You are responsible for those men the way you are responsible for your own heartbeat, constantly, without thinking about it, because stopping is not an option. The first time a Delta operator asks your opinion on an approach angle, you almost miss the question. Not because you don't have an answer, because no one has ever asked before. In the regular Army, pilots fly where they're told. Here, you're part of the planning. Your judgment is part of the weapon. That's the moment you understand what this unit actually is. Not a taxi service with better equipment. A team where everyone's expertise is load-bearing. Where the pilot's read on a landing zone carries the same weight as the shooter's read on a target. You are not the best pilot who ever flew a helicopter. But on this mission, for this team, at this hour, you are exactly the right one. The briefing says light resistance. 6 to 8 fighters. Target is a bomb maker, mid-level. Responsible for 3 IEDs in the past 4 months. Small compound on the eastern edge of a village that's been quiet for years. Intel has been watching it for 6 weeks. Pattern of life is established. Get in, grab the target, get out. 20 minutes on the ground maximum. You've heard this before. Not this briefing specifically. This category of briefing. The one where everything is known. Everything is accounted for. Every variable has been observed and logged and color-coded on a slide deck that someone spent 12 hours building. You fly in anyway. Because that's the job. The compound appears in your goggles right on schedule. Walls, courtyard, single-story building on the north side, exactly like the satellite photos, and then something that wasn't in the satellite photos, a light in a window, a child's silhouette, small, still, watching. The operators don't move. You hold the hover. 30 seconds pass, then a minute. Your crew chief is scanning, hands on the gun, waiting for a threat that isn't materializing. The intel said bomb maker. The intel said fighters. The intel didn't say anything about a family that apparently moved in sometime between the last overhead pass and tonight. Wrong address, wrong compound, wrong everything. 90 seconds on the hover, the longest 90 seconds of your career, and nobody is shooting at you. That's what makes it the longest 90 seconds of your career. When people are shooting, you act. When nobody is shooting and you're hanging in the air over someone's home in the middle of the night, and a child is looking up at the sky wondering what that sound is, you wait. And waiting is its own kind of violence. The call comes over the radio. Abort, confirm abort. You pull pitch and climb. The flight back is quiet in a way that gunfire never produces. The operators don't debrief out loud. You don't ask questions. Everyone sits with the same weight. Later, in the debrief room, someone uses the word inconclusive. You write it down in the margin of your notes and stare at it for a long time. Inconclusive. As if the night were a sentence that didn't finish. As if the child in the window were a data point that didn't fit the model. You never find out whose compound it was. You never find out if the right one was ever found. That's not your part of the story. But here is what you carry out of that room and never fully put down. Every night you fly, you are the last variable in a chain of decisions made by people who aren't in the aircraft. The intelligence is built by humans. The targeting is approved by humans. The margin for error belongs to everyone. The consequences land on you, not because you failed, because you showed up. That distinction will matter more than you expect in the years ahead. On the nights when everything goes right, it will feel like vindication. On the nights when it doesn't, it will feel like the loneliest sentence in the English language. You were just the pilot. Somewhere around Mission 80, something shifts. You don't notice it happening. That's the problem. It doesn't arrive as a moment. No single flight where you think this is different now. It accumulates the way damage accumulates in an airframe. Invisible until the inspection that finds it, and by then it's been there for months. What shifts is the fear. Not that it disappears. Fear doesn't disappear in this job. What happens is subtler and more dangerous. It becomes manageable. Comfortable, almost. You learn to carry it the way you carry your sidearm. Present, accessible, not something you think about until you need it. And when fear becomes something you manage, instead of something that keeps you honest, you are standing at the edge of a very specific kind of problem. Muscle memory is the enemy of survival. The insert into a hot LZ that you've done 200 times feels like the insert you've done 200 times. Your hands go to the right places. Your scan pattern runs on autopilot. You're technically executing the mission correctly, while the part of your brain that should be asking, "What's different tonight?" has gone quiet, because tonight looks exactly like last night and the night before that. That's the night something finds the gap. You learn to fight it deliberately. Change your scan sequence. Ask your co-pilot different questions than usual. Find the one thing about this approach, this LZ, this weather, this load that is not identical to the last time, because something is always different, and the job is to find it before it finds you. The worst nights aren't the hot ones. The worst nights are the ones where nothing happens. You fly out, you hold, you fly back. No contact, no pickup. No confirmation that the hours you spent in that cockpit served any purpose you'll ever be allowed to know about. You land, you debrief a negative, you eat whatever's left in the chow hall at 4 a.m. Those nights leave a different kind of mark. Not dramatic, not the kind that shows up in anyone's after-action report. Just a slow, accumulating question that has no answer and no proper place to live. What was that for? You learn not to ask it out loud. You never fully stop asking it. The approach is textbook. That's what makes it dangerous. When everything looks right, you stop looking for what's wrong. Altitude good, airspeed good, LZ confirmed cold. Same desert, same coordinates, same crew you've flown with for 14 months. You know this approach the way you know your own breathing, without thinking about it, which is exactly the problem. The dust comes up without warning. Not a gradual reduction in visibility. Not the kind of brownout you've trained for, where you lose the horizon first and then the ground, where you have time to transition to instruments and hold your descent rate and trust the numbers. This is instant. 1 second you have a landing zone, the next second you have nothing. The desert rose up and swallowed the world whole. Your co-pilot calls altitude 30, 20. You're already too low to go around, already too slow. The procedure says abort. Lost visual, execute missed approach, reset. The procedure was written by someone who had time to think about it. You have no time. You hold the descent rate. You trust the altimeter. You trust the radar. You trust 14 months of nights exactly like this one. At 10 feet, something is wrong with the number. You feel it before you understand it. The aircraft settling faster than the instruments show. A heaviness in the controls that doesn't match the data. You make one correction. It's not enough. The wheels hit at an angle that the airframe was not designed to survive gracefully. And for the next 4 seconds, the world is nothing but metal and momentum and the specific sound of a helicopter losing the argument with the ground. Then, silence. You're on your side. Where the aircraft is, you can't tell the difference yet. The smell hits first. JP-8, pooling somewhere below you, sweet and wrong in the way that means fire is a question of when, not if. You find the emergency release by feel because your goggles are gone and the darkness is total. You fall. Your leg registers something broken in a distant, clinical way. You crawl. Your co-pilot comes out behind you, your crew chiefs, one moving, one not. You pull everyone you can reach away from the airframe before it catches. 3 weeks in the hospital. Fractured femur. Concussion. Burns along both forearms that will scar in patterns you'll spend years explaining or not explaining, depending on who's asking. On day 19, a doctor sits down across from you and asks if you want to fly again. You don't answer immediately. That pause, 2 seconds, maybe 3, is the most honest thing you've done in years. Because for the first time since you shook that instructor's hand at the end of Green Platoon, you genuinely don't know. The answer that has always lived in your chest, automatic and certain, isn't there when you reach for it. It comes back. Slower than before, but it comes back, yes. Not because you're fearless, not because the crash didn't cost you something permanent, but because the alternative is becoming someone who used to fly and you don't know how to be that person yet. Maybe you never will. The briefing room has more brass than you've ever seen in one place. That's the first sign. Generals don't attend mission briefs. Generals attend the briefs that decide whether other briefs happen. When they're in the room with you, looking at the same maps you're looking at, something is different about tonight in a way that has no tactical designation. The target has no name on the slides. Just a designation, a code. The kind of language that means the name itself is classified, which means the name is known to everyone in the room and spoken by no one. Foreign country. Hostile government. 0 authorization. If anything goes wrong, if you're shot down, if you're captured, if a single piece of this aircraft ends up in someone else's hands, you are on your own in a way that has no rescue attached to it. The mission doesn't exist. Neither do you. 2 helicopters, 24 operators, 1 attempt. The flight out takes 4 hours. Low altitude, radar avoidance, radio silence so complete it feels like flying in a vacuum. You cross a border that doesn't know you're there. You fly over a city where millions of people are asleep, unaware that something is passing over their heads that will change the next decade of their lives. Your hands don't shake. That's how you know how far you've come. The compound appears exactly where it was supposed to be, and then the aircraft starts lying to you, sluggish, heavy, the lift numbers not matching the feeling in your hands. You know this feeling. You've felt it before in training, in the margins of other missions. The air at this altitude, this temperature, this load. You are not going to make the original landing zone. Half a second, that's all you have. You put it down inside the walls. The tail catches. The aircraft spins. You feel the impact in your spine and your hands and somewhere deeper than either. The bird settles hard at an angle that is wrong in 3 different ways, and right in the one way that matters. You're down. The operators are moving and nobody is dead. Then you wait. 38 minutes. You sit in a broken helicopter inside a compound in a country that doesn't know you're there, listening to sounds you cannot see. Doors breached, problems solved in rooms you will never enter. Your crew chiefs set the charges in silence, methodical, because if this aircraft doesn't fly out, it cannot be left to be read. You wait and you hold and you breathe. The radio stays silent. That silence, The one from the very beginning of this story. You understand it now. It doesn't mean clean. It means everyone already knows their part. It means the plan is so thoroughly inside everyone that words would only slow it down. They come back carrying something heavy. You don't ask what it is. You already know what it means. The physical damage is the easy part to explain. Your back gives you 30 minutes of warning before weather changes, which would be useful if you still lived somewhere with weather worth predicting. The hearing in your left ear tops out at frequencies that normal conversations don't use, which means you catch about 80% of what people say and spend the other 20% nodding at the right intervals. Your right knee sounds like gravel in a tin can on cold mornings. You are 37 years old. Your body is 51. None of that is the hard part. The hard part is the evening your daughter looks at you from across the dinner table. You've been home 4 days, the longest stretch in 8 months. And you realize you cannot remember what her face looks like when she's relaxed. You know her face in photographs. You know it in the specific way she looks when she first sees you after a long absence, that complicated expression that is part relief and part something she's learned to protect herself with. But her ordinary face, the one she wears on a Tuesday when nothing is happening and no one is arriving or leaving. You don't know that face. You've been gone for so much of her life that you miss the version of her that exists when no one important is watching. It's not in any after-action report. There's no debrief for it. No lessons learned column where someone writes pilot missed daughter's default expression and files it under things to improve next rotation. You just carry it. The marriage ends quietly, the way long absences end things, not in a single rupture but in the gradual realization that two people have been building separate lives for so long that coming back together requires an effort neither person has the remaining energy to make. You don't blame anyone. It's almost worse than blame. Blame would give it a shape. This is just weather. Slow, structural, and by the time you see it clearly, already finished. You sit in a bar somewhere stateside on a Tuesday night and Marcus sits down across from you. You haven't seen him in 5 years. He looks exactly like someone who went home. And neither of you speaks for a long moment. The bar is loud around you. You exist in a pocket of quiet that only makes sense if you were both there at the beginning. Both standing in the dark with packs on your backs, both watching the best candidate in the class make a different choice. He has 2 kids, a wife still there, home every night. You look at each other across everything that happened and everything that didn't, and there's nothing to say that the silence doesn't already contain. He picks up his glass. You pick up yours. That's the whole conversation. You teach now. New pilots come through Green Platoon, and you watch them the way the instructors once watched you. Clipboard in hand, looking for the floor, not the ceiling. Some of them remind you of Marcus. Sharp, capable, every number on paper pointing toward something exceptional. You watch them carefully. Not because you're waiting for them to fail. Because you know that the ones who look most certain are sometimes the ones who haven't met their question yet. The question that Green Platoon is actually asking isn't how much can you take. It's who are you when taking is all that's left. Some of them find out the answer is enough. Some of them find out it isn't. Both outcomes are honest. Both outcomes are the right answer for the person giving them. You stopped judging that somewhere around year 8, somewhere between a crash you survived and a mission the world celebrated without knowing your name. Marcus made a choice. You made a choice. The difference between them isn't courage and cowardice. It isn't strength and weakness. It's just 2 different answers to the same question, given by 2 different people on 2 different nights, and both of them true. The radio silence at the beginning of this story, you know what it means now. It doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything that needs to be said has already been said. It means the people on that frequency trust each other past the point where words are necessary. That's what this unit is. Underneath the aircraft and the missions and the names that will never appear in any public record. It's people who answered, not because the answer was easy, not because they were certain, but because when the frequency opened up and someone needed a pilot who would fly into the dark, they picked up every time.